I definitely think so. I mean, I will preface this by saying that I do think some of the you see two streams of thought right now, which is like the hype train and the doomerism. I think the answer is probably somewhere in the middle in terms of where the actual capability is. Like, to be perfectly honest, like I always say, I was actually more blown away by GPT-3 when it came out 3 years ago. And I remember that moment exactly. I remember I was sitting in a cafe in like May 2020 reading the paper, and I was like, holy shit, right? And so I don't think anything OpenAI has done since then is actually as an ML engineer, like kind of sort of kicked me back on my chair more than GPT-3 at the time. So that's something I always use for context. But yeah, I definitely think that you see where this is going, right? And a lot of it is co-piloting, right? So in other words, like one of the great use cases, of course, is writing code, or like, kind of helping with as a writing tool, right? But it doesn't do the whole thing, right? What it basically does is I think it lets you iterate through concepts significantly faster, right? And that's true for writing, that's true for image generation, so on and so forth. So I think a lot of these jobs that I don't know if they're going to go away, but they might be reframed, right? Like, let's just take a software engineer. I think what ChatGPT does, or let's just say GitHub Copilot does, is effectively a lot of what like a junior engineer, like an entry level coming out of college kind of engineer would do for like a tech lead, right? In terms of like, the tech lead will tell the junior engineer, write a function, right? And do this. And so I don't think that tech lead is at any imminent risk, right? Because they still have to build the system architecture. There's a lot of actually creative kind of alignment work and stuff that needs to happen at that level that ChatGPT cannot do, but it might do some of the work that the junior engineer does. And so subsequently, like, does that reimagine what an entry-level engineer might look like? For example, I think that's, for example, a big question. I think you'd say the same about writing. Like one domain I look a lot is obviously gaming, because that's very kind of within the 3D space. And I think there's the same kind of question on game designers now. They like, what is that going to look like, right? Where my thesis is that, like, I don't think less people are going to have jobs. I just think that more of the designers, or their output's going to be 10x, which you actually need. For example, if you want to build a kind of fully immersive VR world, like, you just can't do it manually quickly enough. So that's actually good. So I think really what it does is it raises the bar for what we can actually accomplish with small teams. So it just kind of 10x is the potential output we'll have in certain domains. And I do emphasize that last point that, I think a lot of this conversation about how like ChatGPT or whatever is going to just take over everything. Like, no, I think like, there are very clear domains where this will be relevant and it will 10x the output. But it's kind of might be limited to that, especially initially. So I see it as net positive, right? And the issue is, I think, there's a lot of the framing around it, and I think you might have hinted at that a little bit, which is, I think it comes across psychologically very differently to people if you frame it as a technology that augments your capability. In other words, makes you more productive. It lets you do more. It actually supercharges your own capability and creativity, versus saying, like AI colleagues, which has this sort of like humanization factor of the technology, which can get scary, right? Because it's like, you can start dooming on that sort of framing a lot, right? Because it like indicates that like maybe we replace people, maybe all of a sudden we have this other kind of artificial instance that's our equal. And that, starts to, I think, provoke like kind of dystopian thoughts. And so I think the framing is a lot of what freaks people out about this, rather than the actual output, right? So I think if you objectively look at the output, you steer it in the right direction, because what I was saying earlier, a lot of really good stuff can come out of this. I mean, like, I think it's great if you tell someone, like, all of a sudden you tell an artist, for example, that, hey, you can iterate through your artistic concepts 10 times faster now, because you can basically get a machine to do some of the concepts for you. That's great, right? It's a new skill set, right? But like, I think that's actually a positive output for everybody. But I think the framing is what's kind of freaking a lot of people out.